I didn't go home that night straight away. The shift had ended hours earlier, but I found myself walking the long route, down the mall, past the emptied stands and shuttered cafes. The bunting from a school parade still clung to the wrought iron railings like forgotten laundry. Bits of confetti fluttered across the pavement, catching on my boots. Somewhere nearby, a fox knocked over a bin and sent a glass bottle skittering into the road. The city, even when asleep, never stopped making noise. I passed the Victoria Memorial and paused to watch the shimmer of rain collect on its marble shoulders. Upton angels above, silent, gilded, clean. No one heckled a statue. The next morning they suspended me, an internal investigation. Conduct unbecoming of the guard, they called it. Someone had taken a video of the incident, a cropped, soulless clip of me restraining that boy after he spat at me. It had been stripped of all context, posted with the caption, "Snowflake Soldier finally snaps," over 500,000 views. Emmett scrolled beneath, laughing emojis, slurs, unprintable filth. They didn't ask what happened before the video, they never do. The mother didn't press charges, only said she was shocked and disappointed that a royal guard would manhandle a teenager. The station officer nodded solemnly, promised review. No one mentioned the spit or the word he'd used, or the way his friends had cheered. I was ordered to stay off palace grounds. Pending outcome, they took my bearskin and my post, stripped back my hours. Temporarily, they said. It felt final. For the first time in 16 years, I was outside the gates looking in. I sat on a bench in Stu James's park and watched my replacement, taller, younger, click his heels into place. The tourists swarmed. As they always did, one woman shoved a camera inches from his face, laughing. He didn't blink. I remembered when I used to take pride in that stillness, back when the uniform meant something. Later that week, I received a formal letter typewritten cold, outlining the process. A review board, possible reinstatement, no apology for the incident, no recognition that I'd been provoked. Just a footnote at the bottom. Please refrain from speaking to the press, as if they'd come knocking. My father used to say the world would always value duty over voice. Say nothing, stand straight, and you'll keep your place. He'd been army too, Sandhurst. Before the stroke, he'd walk with the same ramrod pride, nodding at his reflection in shop windows to check his posture. I tried, God knows I did, but the stillness started to rot. The longer I sat in silence, the more the indignity festered. At the Tesco near my flat, 2 teenagers passed me in the queue and barked in mock drill, commands 10 hut. Then snorted into each other's sleeves. I ignored it, but my hands curled slightly, the way they had when I first learned to salute. I wasn't angry. I was emptied. That changed when the old woman came. It was a wet Friday, late afternoon. I had gone to collect a letter from the post office, a pension form that needed my signature. Bureaucracy, always thick with stamps and silence. I crossed the roundabout at Vauxhall when I saw it, a small cluster of boys, maybe 15 or 16, surrounding a woman near the bus stop. She was trying to shield her shopping bag, one of them tugging at it like a game. The others laughed, not hard, just enough to won't I move before thinking. My boots pounded the pavement. The sound must have startled them because they scattered before I even reached them. The woman looked up, eyes trembling behind thick spectacles. I recognized her vaguely, a neighbor. Perhaps she held onto her bag like a life vest. Breath shallow. "Thank you," she whispered. I nodded once, then looked down. The handles of the bag had torn clean off. A packet of rich tea biscuits lay cracked on the ground. "Do you want me to walk you home?" She hesitated, then nodded. It was only 3 streets over. We didn't talk much. She walked slowly, and I kept pace, hands clasped behind my back, like parade rest. When we reached her gate, she turned to me and said, "You stood like you used to stand, like they couldn't touch you." I didn't reply, but something in me shifted. That night I shaved, polished my old boots, not for duty, for me. Over the next few days, I went back to my routine, not with permission, but with purpose. I stood outside the palace, just beyond the official boundary, in civvies, but with the same stance. People stared, some recognized me from the video, others walked past without care. But I kept showing up, a quiet form of protest, a living reminder 2 weeks later, a journalist from The Independent approached me. "You're the guard from the clip, aren't you?" I said I was. He asked if I wanted to speak. I said I wouldn't talk about the boy, but I'd talk about the uniform, about what it used to mean. The article came out on a Monday. Still standing, the guard who didn't break just bled quietly. There was no explosion of outrage, no immediate vindication, but something shifted. A letter arrived from the ministry. They wanted to review the circumstances with full context. An unofficial apology was mentioned. Clear voices, cautious faces, no fanfare, just a slow walking back. But I wasn't asking for my post back. I wanted my name back. I started speaking at local schools, not about discipline, not about respect, about what it means to be invisible in plain sight. I told them about duty, about how silence is not always strength, and laughter at someone else's expense is the cheapest currency. Some listened. One boy, after an assembly in Croydon, approached me and said, "Sir, I didn't know soldiers could feel like that." I looked him in the eyes. "Everyone does. You just have to look harder." I never stood guard again. Not officially, but that wasn't the point, because now I was no longer a statue in red wool and brass. I was a man who had endured silence, absorbed mockery, and still stood upright, and that, I realized, was the strongest posture of all. I kept the uniform. Even after everything, the hearings, the silence, the polite but final dismissal letter that came folded into a plain brown envelope with no signature, just a stamp, I kept it pressed, cleaned, hung in the far left side of my wardrobe behind winter coats I hadn't worn in years. It's strange what we cling to. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. Not even hurt, not in the fresh, pulsing way I had been in those first weeks. What remained was something duller, like a pressure behind the ribs, constant but manageable. You learn to breathe around it. What had happened to me wasn't exceptional. That's the most humbling and terrifying part. I saw it again, weeks later, at the magistrate's court. I'd gone to speak on behalf of a neighbor, a Polish man wrongly fined for a parking ticket. He never received. He didn't ask me to come. I just showed up. Sat in the back, watched a junior clerk bark through his paperwork, never once looking up at the man he was addressing. That same bureaucratic rhythm, cold, unquestioning, like he wasn't speaking to a person, but a problem on a page. When the man tried to speak, to explain, the clerk lifted a hand, curt as missive, and said, "Sir, this is not a discussion." I saw the look on my neighbor's face, the same one I must have worn. The moment you realize you're not really there, not as a human being anyway. Just a file, a number, something in the way. So I stood up. "I think he's owed one," I said quietly, but the words came like boots in a silent hall. The room turned, the clerk blinked, and "Who are you?" I smiled. "Just someone who used to think respect came with a uniform." A pause long enough to be uncomfortable. And then softly the magistrate, older, grey-bearded, weary-looking, adjusted his glasses and said he may speak. Let him finish. That was it, nothing more. But for once someone had looked up. It wasn't a victory, just a crack in the wall. That night I walked back through Whitehall. I paused out of habit near the Horse Guards parade. One of the younger guards was standing there, rain soaking into his collar, unmoving. A group of drunk students, Americans maybe, were yelling, posing for selfies. One girl danced mockingly in front of him, pretending to faint dramatically. He didn't flinch, but I saw it, the twitch of his jaw, the fingers slightly tightening on the hilt of his saber. I stepped in, not loudly, not rudely. Just walked up beside the girl, smiled, and said, "You wouldn't do that at a grave. You shouldn't do it here." She blinked. Confused, a friend snorted. "He's not a statue," I added. "He just looks more patient than the rest of us." She looked at the guard. For the first time, maybe saw him. Her expression shifted, not quite to shame, but discomfort. Good. Discomfort is where empathy begins. They moved on. He didn't speak, didn't acknowledge me, but his shoulders lowered slightly like a breath released. That was enough. I began walking a different route after that. Past stations, Courts, schools, not looking for. Confrontation, just watching, listening. Sometimes stepping in, sometimes just being there. And slowly I realized it wasn't about reclaiming a title or a duty, or even respect. It was about something older, quieter, dignity, not the kind granted by rank or badge. The kind you have to hold on to when everything else is stripped away. I still get looks. Some recognize me from the clip. It floats around online, re-uploaded every few months with new captions. Guard loses it. UK soldier snaps. Boomer meltdown. I don't read the comments anymore. The ones who understand don't need proof. The rest were never listening anyway. One morning, outside a tube station, a young boy, maybe 8, tugged on his mum's coat and pointed at me. "That's the man who stood still," he said. She looked over, uncertain. I smiled, just a little. "Because you have to stand still," he added, "even when it's hard." I wanted to kneel, to tell him it's okay to move, that standing still isn't always bravery. Sometimes it's just what people expect you to do, because they're too afraid to admit they couldn't, but I didn't. Instead, I straightened slightly, nodded to him, and said sometimes, but not always. The train doors opened. He waved, then he was gone. The city moved on, it always does. But this time, I didn't feel left behind.